Hello, this short video will tell you all about student voice, the student rights of expression in public schools, legal considerations, especially for journalists like yourselves. So, in July 2015, 43-year-old Eric Garner peddled illegal cigarettes on a street corner in the Bronx, an action he was known to do from time to time in a black market setup designed to circumvent New York City tobacco regulations. When confronted by police, he did not comply with verbal commands, which led to an unfortunate hands-on occurrence by police, which resulted in Garner's death. A bystander recorded the incident in which Garner was heard to state, "I can't breathe," several times before expiring. Through investigations, one officer was found to be using questionable defensive tactics, the use of a chokehold. After legal proceedings, a grand jury acquitted the officer, the second acquittal of a police officer in a week's time, for use of deadly force, or the deadly use of defensive tactics, the other from Ferguson, Missouri. Somewhat more peaceful than the Ferguson-related protests, people still voiced their displeasure with the decision by gathering with signs that said Black Lives Matter and chants of "I can't breathe." Professional athletes too protested the decisions through wearing of shirts with Garner's last words printed on them. Public school students as well protested the verdict. In fact, the whole girls basketball team from Mendocino High School in California planned to wear the shirts during warm-up for an upcoming tournament, should students be allowed to do so. Student expression is a balance between the rights of students to voice an opinion and the responsibility of a school to ensure a safe, non-disruptive learning environment. 4 landmark court cases serve as the fulcrum for such a balance. Tinker versus Des Moines, Bethel School District number 403 versus Fraser, Hazelwood School District versus Kohlmeyer, and Morse versus Frederick. In 1969, 3 students were suspended from school for wearing black armbands in protest of the Vietnam War. The incident made its way to the Supreme Court, where Tinker versus Des Moines School District determined that while students do have protected rights within the school may limit speech if what is being said is A, if it causes a substantial disruption to the school's educational purposes, which may include school safety issues, and B, the speech infringes on the rights of others. Clearly, this ruling is wide open, which is why other court rulings must be considered in most cases of student expression. Bethel School District number 403 versus Fraser sets the standard that schools may limit expression if it is deemed vulgar. In this case, a high school junior used an extended metaphor of a non-appropriate school nature to endorse another student for office. The unapproved speech was delivered during an assembly and caused consternation for some in the audience. A 3rd landmark court case is Hazelwood School District versus Kohlmeyer. Right before press time, the principal at the high school pulled two student editorials from the school newspaper, a product of the journalism class. Crying censorship, the case ended up in the Supreme Court, where it was determined that schools may limit student expression in situations where the students' opinions may be construed as the official position of the school itself. So if what the student thinks is an opinion could be considered what the school thinks is an opinion, and it's not necessarily an opinion that the school believes in, it can be limited. This can include public speeches, theater productions, school athletic events, and any area where the student's position might be considered the school's position. One final applicable case is Morse versus Frederick. This ruling narrowed the scope that Hazelwood established, that speech at a school-sponsored event that could be construed to promote illegal drug use can be prohibited by school officials. In this particular situation, students displayed a sign stating "Bong hits for Jesus" during a field trip to view the passing of the Olympic torch in Juneau, Alaska. The Ninth Circuit Court held the speech was protected, but the Supreme Court felt differently. let's practice these cases, shall we? Student expression includes what students say, write, and wear. On the next slides, you'll see some examples of images that might show up at the school projects, protests, or apparel. Are they protected? Student expression. You'll notice that all of these have a religious theme. Often people may assume that any religious expression is not allowed in school. Take one moment and write down which of these do you think would be allowed in school. So yes, schools cannot promote or endorse religion. However, through a variety of court decisions, it is now determined that a school must have a compelling reason to ban religious expressions by students. So, which of these should be allowed? I would say that probably all of them could be allowed. The most questionable one might be A, because it does have guns on it. And that would depend on the culture of the school. Now what about these drug-related expressions? Would any of these be deemed appropriate for school? Given that, here's the other information, given that drug use is illegal for people under the age of 21 in the state of Alaska, none of these should be considered in school because they promote illegal activity for students. These are images related to events from 2015. Would these be considered disruptive to school? For each one of these, it probably depends on the context. Students are allowed to make political statements, but as you'll recall, according to Tinker, it cannot disrupt the function of school, which is to provide education. So in the situation with the Mendocino High School girls basketball team, the girls were asked not to wear the shirts during the warm-up, even though they had done so at a few previous games. More girls declined than volunteered to not wear them, therefore they were uninvited to the tournament in Fort Bragg. One factor at play included the differences in school and communities. Mendocino students generally being more progressive about social causes, while the more conservative Fort Bragg community experienced the loss of a police officer shot previously, they had rallied around the local law enforcement, considering that I Can't Breathe can be taken in an anti-police opinion. Is it disruptive in a place where there may have been a police shooting? As representatives of the school as an official school function, legally student expression could have been restricted if the shirt caused a substantial disruption to education or safety. Some of the parents and students did see the restriction as a violation of the First Amendment rights, but in the end, the shirts were allowed and the tournament passed without violence. The situation balanced the idea of what was legal, a legal right at the school to restrict student expression, with the politics of a nationally volatile controversy. Additionally, an ethical approach to the situation offered choices. Would the ban disrupt instruction when school resumed more than allowing the shirts? What's the ethical consideration in a community dealing with its own police-related violence? All of this needs to be considered. In summary, this is how you can consider if what is being said is allowed in school. For you, as representatives of the yearbook, you are representing an official school capacity. At that point, you have rights, but when they bump up against any of these considerations, the school may have the right to limit what is said. As people involved in publication, you always want to consider your audience, consider your purpose, and at all times, make sure you're putting forth the best possible product for those around. In summary, you follow the path and see where you land. Always consider the stakeholders of the school, students, parents, community, taxpayers, school board, etc., and the possible impacts a student's legal expression may have. The school's purpose is not to censor student expression at every turn, but instead to provide a place of learning in a safe environment. When student expression impacts this function of the school, then it should be addressed under the law. Otherwise, you're encouraged to express your opinion in a respectful manner that invites discourse where conflict occurs. That makes you an example for the larger of society.